Good evening. This is Forum Daily for Monday, July 11th. I'm Julie Stautland filling in for Nima Rajan. BC Premier John Horgan says federal funding for healthcare leads the agenda as Canada's premiers launch 2 days of talks in Victoria today. Mr. Horgan, the current chairman of the Council of Federation, says the 13 provincial and territorial leaders are united in seeking an overhaul of the federal funding model. He says soaring costs and staffing shortages have forced some hospitals to take drastic measures, including short-term closures of emergency rooms. In advance of the Council of the Federation gathering, premiers met with officials representing Canada's 5 national Indigenous leadership groups. A massive outage at one of Canada's major telecom companies has prompted a meeting between the federal industry minister and the CEO of Rogers Communications. A statement from François-Philippe Champagne's office says the minister found Friday's disruption unacceptable. It says he'll meet today with Rogers boss Tony Staffieri and other telecom leaders to discuss improving Canada's networks. The Rogers outage began Friday morning and lasted at least 15 hours, knocking out access to many healthcare, law enforcement, and banking services. Ottawa has found a powerful supporter for its decision to allow a natural gas pipeline between Russia and Europe to resume operations. The U.S. State Department says it backs Canada's decision to send repaired turbine equipment from the Nord Stream 1 pipeline back to Germany. The decision has been criticized by Ukraine, which calls it a dangerous exception to Canada's sanctions against Russia. Natural Resource Minister Jonathan Wilkinson says the move is necessary to ensure Europe has immediate access to reliable, affordable energy. A Canadian small business group is calling on the federal and provincial governments to temporarily eliminate or lower fuel taxes. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business says record gas prices, supply chain snarls, and labor shortages have pushed the cost of doing business through the roof. It says higher transportation and fuel costs have driven 92% of small businesses to increase prices in the past year. Hundreds of protesters who demonstrated outside Montreal's courthouse say the light sentence imposed on a man who pleaded guilty to sexual assault and voyeurism shows the inadequacy of the justice system. Simon Oul was convicted of assaulting an acquaintance and taking photos of the intimate parts of her body as she slept in 2019. Last week, a judge in Trois-Rivières gave Mr. Oul probation and a conditional discharge, saying the assault happened all in all quickly and a conviction would make it hard for Mr. Oul to travel as an engineer. Quebec's Crown Prosecutor's Office said it will appeal the judge's decision. Officials with the public inquiry into the 2020 Nova Scotia mass shooting have warned that this week may be even more difficult than others. The Mass Casualties Commission is releasing documents that include details about the sexual and physical violence committed by the gunman. Among the documents are transcripts of 5 multi-hour interviews that inquiry members conducted with the shooter's spouse, Lisa Banfield. A new national survey by the Canadian Hub for Applied and Social Research at the University of Saskatchewan finds most Canadians believe they have freedom of speech. However, that belief depends on their political leanings. It found that 8 in every 10 people say they believe they have freedom of speech, but when it came to respondents who identified as right-leaning, 1 in 4 said that Canadians have very little or no freedom of speech at all. A former Quebec biker boss imprisoned for murdering 2 prison guards has died at age 69. Correctional Service Canada says Maurice Boucher died of apparent natural causes at a federal penitentiary north of Montreal. He had been suffering from throat cancer. The notorious Hells Angel leader was serving a life sentence for the 1997 murders of 2 prison guards during a period of gang violence in Quebec known as the Biker Wars. A National Beekeeping Association says more than half of PEI's beehives didn't survive the winter. A Canadian Association of Professional Apiculturists survey says the loss amounted to about 3,500 hives. The group says the island isn't alone. Almost half the beehives kept across Canada didn't make it through the winter. The association says warm weather and mites are likely to blame for the losses on PEI. After the break, we will take a look at Japan's recent upper house elections and what the results mean after the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. A conversation with Jonathan Berkshire Miller up next. So stay tuned to Forum Daily. We'll be right back. The party of former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is vowing to finish his work days after Abe was shot dead at a campaign event. The Liberal Democratic Party and its junior coalition partner secured a majority in the parliament's upper house in Sunday's elections. The result means Abe's successor, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, could rule uninterrupted until a scheduled vote in 2025. It also allows him to work on Mr. Abe's unfinished goals, including strengthening the military and even revising the country's pacifist constitution. Joining us to unpack the election, Mr. Abe's legacy, and what it all means for Japan and the greater region is Jonathan Berkshire Miller, Director and Senior Fellow of the Indo-Pacific Program at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. He is also a Senior Fellow with the Japan Institute of International Affairs. Mr. Miller, welcome back to Forum Daily.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be on.
Let us start with the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. What has been the impact in Japan?
Well, I think Japan, as much of the world, has been deeply shocked by this incident. First of all, political violence like this is a rarity in Japan. Gun violence itself, actually, is a rarity in Japan. And not only this, but I think Abe himself was a giant on the international stage and a giant in Japan. Not everyone necessarily agreed with his policies, but he was Japan's longest-serving modern-day prime minister. And I think his death really was a bit of a political earthquake to many in Japan.
What is the significance of Mr. Abe's legacy, both in Japan and the Indo-Pacific region?
I think Abe's death and his legacy and his life, I think, will be felt quite a bit in this part of the world. Frankly, Abe was a strong leader in a period where there wasn't much leadership. You look around the G7 even now, obviously we've seen what's happened in the UK with Boris Johnson's removal. There really isn't much leadership right now in the G7. There isn't much leadership in the G20. We see authoritarians on the march, whether it's in China or Russia. Abe, during his time, was a strong leader. He stood up for the international rules-based order. He promoted free trade and strong international institutions that could be resilient against these authoritarian threats. And I think that's going to be a legacy that he leaves.
Fumio Kishida, Japan's PM, has seen his majority increase in the upper house. How do you expect this to impact government policies moving forward?
So I think Kishida predictably was able to get a strong majority now. The Liberal Democratic Party, which he leads, continues to be a stalwart in Japanese politics. I think we can see consistency rather than any sort of disruption in Japanese politics. Japan will continue to be a strong voice for ensuring a strong rules-based order in this part of the world. Although I do worry the fact that Kishida is a strong leader. He's following many of the policies of Abe, but he doesn't necessarily yet have that stature that Abe had. So whether he can sort of fulfill that in his coming years is an open question.
So what are the main strategic issues for Japan in the Indo-Pacific region?
I think Japan, frankly, lives in a bit of a challenging part of the world. Obviously, its neighborhood, it has the relationship with China, territorial disputes with China. It also has an increasingly fractious relationship with Russia to its north, which it also has a territorial dispute with, in addition to the challenges of North Korea and its continued advancement of its nuclear and ballistic missile weapons program. So Japan has a host of different challenges, and frankly, its economy is very much reliant on the interdependency of these economies. So any challenge, whether it's over Taiwan, whether it's over North Korea, directly will impact Japanese security and its economy.
We know the Quad is important to Japan's security. How is this alliance important to the Indo-Pacific region and Canada's strategic interests in the region?
Well, I think the Quad is a recognition that while multilateralism has some impact and some effect, that it's maybe a necessary but insufficient way to deal with some of the challenges in this region. Frankly, the United Nations is not going to resolve some of the challenges that we face, especially in this part of the world. And the Quad is an outgrowth of that. I think the Quad, being Japan, India, Australia, and the United States, have aligned together, not necessarily to contain China, but to stand up for what they think is right in this region. And what is right is often shared interest, shared values of democracy, and a shared sense of the rule of law being primacy, having a prime element in international affairs.
Well, thank you so much for your time. After the break, a look at a Canadian space success story. We will hear more about space engine systems and our mission for high-speed flight both on Earth and in outer space. A conversation with Pradeep Das, President and Chief Technology Officer of Space Engine Systems, after the break. It's a dream of many to one day be able to hop on a rocket and take a trip through the cosmos. And one Canadian company aims to push the boundaries of hypersonic flight and space accessibility at the lowest possible cost. Space Engine Systems is pursuing high-speed flight both on Earth and in space. They completed testing of a full-scale engine in 2021, and they have other suborbital and low Earth orbit flights planned for the next 2 years. They've developed their rockets using both air-breathing and rocket engines, and their innovative heat exchanger and ramjet technologies will aim to overtake the top speeds of any modern vehicle. Joining us now to talk more about Space Engine Systems and their mission is Pradeep Das, President and Chief Technology Officer. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about Space Engine Systems, or SES, and how the company came to be.
Space Engine Systems was established in 2011. The aim was basically for the lunar mission. We were trying to replace the rocket in the sense like wherever there's atmosphere, we wanted to use the oxygen in the atmosphere. So we have a combined cycle with an air-breathing engine and the rocket engine. That's how it came about. And of course, it's the lowest cost because you're using free oxygen in the atmosphere instead of a rocket, where it's got to take oxygen and other stuff, even during the ascent to atmospheric area.
Could you give our viewers a brief overview of what hypersonic flight is?
It's very simple. Hypersonic just means Mach 5 times the speed of sound or higher. That's it.
SES has a laid out plan regarding when certain named rockets will be tested, as well as which altitude they are aiming to reach. Can you briefly go over each of the rockets and when they are scheduled to be tested?
Okay, Hello One experimental, as the name implies, is an experimental air-breathing engine. It's a plane. It takes off horizontally and lands horizontally. It'll go up to Mach 5 and it will reach an altitude somewhere between 28 to 32 kilometers, and then it'll come back and land. That will prove the flight test. And we have done all the engine tests last year, and it was published in the AIAA Aerospace America, completed turbine and the ramjet testing. Now what we are doing is an integrated testing of the vehicle body, which we're building right now. So it should be ready this year, but whether we can fly or not depends on FAA. And our aim is to fly from the US, and that's our focus at this time.
Where is SES currently regarding its testing schedule? Like, as you mentioned, which rocket are you actively working on or testing right now?
We are basically working on the Hello One experimental. That is the first vehicle, which will be ready this year. We started the design on Hello One and Hello 2, which is basically a larger vehicle than this one, except for the Hello One X, it'll only go up to 20 to 32 kilometers and come back and land. Hello One would take us all the way to suborbital, and it can release a transfer vehicle of 550 kilograms for satellite. But all these, including Hello One X, are manned or crewed vehicle with an unmanned option. And the Hello 2 would take 5,500 kilograms to LEO or low Earth orbit. But again, Hello One and Hello 2 can send a transfer vehicle to the lunar mission. So that's the focus of the whole company. And we are trying to displace other rocket companies. I mean, we consider SpaceX as one of the best companies in rocket technology. And if you look at the first stage coming back, it's taken the oxygen, the fuel, the liquid nitrogen to come back and land softly. And for us, it's just glide back. It's free. So we basically take oxygen from air.
What would you say is the importance of space engineering and space exploration as the technology continues to develop?
I mean, the very fact that we are talking to you or you're using your cell phone is all based on space technology. Had it not been for the people before us in the last 50 years, for them to aim for the moon, we won't have any of the cell technology. Let's go to the basics. Or if you have a drilling machine with a battery, that's what they use at the lunar mission to rotate something. They never had power. They use battery technology, which and now we use it every day in our houses. The immense in terms of medicine to do zero gravity technology research. It's a huge thing. I mean, people just don't realize, but every time you use your cell phone, you have to thank anyone who's worked on space technology.
Thank you so much for your time. After the break, we've got more news from around the world. Sri Lanka remains in political limbo. Scientists say a new mutation of COVID-19 is spreading around the world, and a supermoon is set to fill the sky on Wednesday. For more news from around the world, stay tuned to Forum Daily. Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a decree expanding a fast track for Russian citizenship to all Ukrainians. Until recently, only residents of some eastern and southern regions, largely controlled by Moscow, were eligible for the simplified procedure. The move comes as Russian shelling of Ukraine's second largest city has killed at least 3 people and injured scores more, including children. The local administrator in Kharkiv called the attacks absolute terrorism. A weekend of political chaos in Sri Lanka continues today, with opposition leaders yet to agree on replacements for the country's president and prime minister. The residences of both leaders remain occupied by protesters who are angered by the country's economic collapse. Crowds of demonstrators overran the buildings on Saturday, the most dramatic day of a 3-month crisis. Corruption and mismanagement have left the island nation laden with debt and widespread shortages, affecting 22 million people. Greece's prime minister has called upon Turkey's president to clarify whether a map displayed by a nationalist ally of Erdogan's that shows several major inhabited Greek islands as Turkish is official Turkish policy. Greece and Turkey have been at loggerheads for decades over issues that include disputes over undersea exploration rights in the Aegean Sea and the sovereignty of uninhabited islets. The two neighbors have come to the brink of war 3 times in the past half-century. The map was given by the ultra-nationalist Grey Wolves group to Devlet Bahçeli, leader of a nationalist party allied with Erdogan. It depicts Crete, Greece's largest island, and all eastern Aegean Greek islands as being Turkish. A new mutation of the virus that causes COVID-19 is spreading around the world. Scientists say the latest Omicron variant, designated BA.275, may be able to spread rapidly and get around immunity. It's unclear whether it could cause more serious disease than the currently dominant variant known as BA.5. But scientists are concerned that it has already been detected across India and in the US, UK, and Canada. Shares of Twitter slid almost 10% in the first day of trading after billionaire Elon Musk said he was abandoning his $44 billion bid to buy the company. The social media platform in turn vowed to challenge Mr. Musk in court to uphold the agreement. Mr. Musk alleged Friday that Twitter has failed to provide enough information about the number of fake accounts it has. Twitter said last month it was handing over to Mr. Musk what it called a fire hose of raw data on hundreds of millions of daily tweets. A French drug company is seeking U.S. approval to sell over-the-counter birth control pill, setting up a high-stakes decision for health regulators. HRA Pharma says the timing of its application to the FDA was unrelated to the Supreme Court's recent decision to overturn the Roe v. Wade ruling, but it comes amid fierce legal and political battles over reproductive health. Firefighters are battling a blaze that's threatening the largest grove of giant sequoias in America's famous Yosemite National Park. Campers and residents near the fire have been evacuated, but the rest of the sprawling park in California remains open. Officials say more than 500 mature sequoias in the famed Mariposa Grove are threatened, but there are no reports of severe damage to any named trees. Officials said Monday that countries have approved the first comprehensive guidelines for judging the value of nature following 4 years of intense debate. The report was endorsed by 139 countries that are members of the United Nations-backed Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. Its authors hope the guide, written with the help of experts from a wide range of disciplines, will make it easier for governments to consider more than just the economic benefits of a project. If you missed last month's supermoon, you'll have another chance on Wednesday. It comes as the moon's orbit brings it closer to Earth than usual, which can make it appear slightly bigger and brighter. I'm Julie Stautland, filling in for Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. For more news on demand, visit our website at thenewsforum.ca and make sure to follow our social media handles on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also watch all our commentary programming and interviews on the News Forum YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us on Forum Daily News, and we'll see you next time. Take care, Canada.